Hello everyone! This is your captain speaking. And welcome to the stream. Gonna be being a bit chill for this first hour. Gonna be trying out something new. Which I personally am quite excited for. As some of you may know, I've started doing a reading video series on my YouTube channel. I read Wikipedia articles. Today, I was thinking we could do something a little bit different, because like most people have like some just chatting at the beginning, right? But I don't always know what to talk about, and sometimes rambling for an hour is a little bit difficult for me. I know, shocking. Well, I thought that I could share a book. I have two books, actually, that I'm interested in. One is from 1983 that I would be reading as a historical document, because it's actually about computers. And how to use computers back in the 80s, which I've read some of the writing. It is fascinating, to me at least. Maybe not to everyone else, but it is to me. But that's not what we're gonna start reading today. We're gonna be reading something a little bit older. We are going to be reading a book from... uh... 1962. We're going to be reading a book from 1962. It is called the I Hate to Housekeep book, When and How to Keep House Without Losing Your Mind, by Peg Bracken, author of the I Hate to Cook book, a hardcover bestseller at $3.75. It also says, quote, "If it's loose, pick it up. If it isn't, dust it. If it moves, feed it." I have actually been a fan of this book for a while. I really like it. I like to read it. So, we're going to be starting with this. Like I said, this book is from 1962. And, yeah, copyright 1962 by Peg Bracken. Copyright 1958 by the Curtis Publishing Company. So we're gonna be reading this. It's a very good little informative thing, and it was never actually re-released. Out of all of her books, the main one that was re-released was the I Hate to Cook book, which is also good. I don't think it's as good from like a fun story point, but like it's meant to be fun, but like teaching you how to do something. And I find the way that she writes a bit more fun and interesting about housekeeping than about food recipes, but that's just me. But this was never like redone. The I Hate to Cook book was like redone like 7 different times, and this one just got left to the wayside, which is a shame because I think it's a really good book, and it's also like a really good time capsule back to the 60s, I think. So we're going to move into the reading voice, so give me just a moment. We're going to be moving into the reading voice. Dedicated for many a good and sufficient reason to Ruth Bracken, with love. Forward. For a number of long years, through no fault of my own, I have been shin deep in the business of giving advice on housewifery. This is a better name for it, I think, than homemaking, which is rather too pretty, like nuisance abatement officer for dog catcher. Housewifery is more honest and more inclusive. Housewifery isn't among the 7 lively arts, though it can certainly be regarded as the 8th. It is lively indeed, in the same way sand hogging is. They both take courage, muscle, and endurance. The main difference between a sandhog and a housewife is that he has a nice clean tunnel later to show for his efforts and it stays put, while she has to do it all over again the next day. She must simply keep tunneling. She is faced constantly with mute but persistent supplicants for attention. There are several choices. Move it, clean it, shine it, brush it, wash it, or hide it. I have been doing all this by myself for about 20 years, and I find it hard on the manicure. I've found, too, that none of the books about it does me much good. The household experts hand out cures that are worse than the ailment. They expect you to do things that depress you merely to think about, let alone do. They think you'll actually keep an orderly file of all the washing instructions that come with the family clothes once you've been told to. The efficiently organized expert makes the mistake of assuming that you too want to be one. My own goals are more modest. I only want to make it around the clock, that's all, and I don't want to think about it too much either because I'm thinking about something else. If you're a bit nervous on the service anyway and your mind is on raising the African violet or running an office or painting a picture, reorganizing yourself into an efficient housewife is a giant step you're not about to take. You want an aspirin, not radical surgery. So, though I admit hastily and gratefully that many of the things in this book were discovered or invented by experts, even the experts slip up once in a while and recommend something you'd consider doing, just as many of them weren't. Indeed, some of the wee nuggets herein are ones I mind all by myself. I'm here from Blue Sky to listen for a bit. Hey Silver, welcome. I hope you enjoy. Take the matter of diapers. I had often heard from wiser folk than I that a soft, old, much-laundered diaper makes as nice a dish towel as any girl could want. When my child outgrew the diaper stage, I learned that this was true. However, as one runs out of babies, one tends to run out of diapers. This happened to me, and for at least 3 months I was wiping the dishes on anything handy. Then, one day, with the lightning-swift grasp of fundamentals that has long marked my slightest move into the household arts, I realized that you don't have to have another baby in order to buy more diapers. You just go buy some, that's all. If you don't have a wedding ring, let alone a baby, and this sort of thing bothers you, you can always have the diapers gift-wrapped. A note here about language. I suppose it was inevitable that around so old a business as housekeeping, surely the second oldest profession, a special vocabulary would have evolved. It has. All the housekeeping experts say food preparation area when they mean kitchen, and soiled spots when they mean dirty places, and so forth. In this book, I prefer to call things by their right names if they'll let me. Sometimes they don't let you. Once, when I wrote a book about having a baby, I wanted to use the word pain, having come to a point in the proceedings where that seemed to be the only word that said what I meant. But they changed it to discomfort. These are things the writer can't do a thing about, and he shouldn't be blamed for them. One more point. The housewifery manuals I have seen pay little attention to certain aspects I consider pertinent. For instance, how to make yourself do things you don't like to do, and how to remember to do them. Some of these techniques are included here. There are some swift recipes, too, for days when you shouldn't have got up in the first place, but still must go that last long mile and cook dinner. And there are some slightly slower recipes for company. And there is the matter of keeping a good front. Indeed, there is a small mountain of miscellany here, and naturally enough, in a book about the most miscellaneous of all miscellaneous businesses. Putting the scraps together was like sorting confetti into a wind tunnel, and you should have seen the ones that blew away. Catch them as they sail past if you can. And meanwhile, here are the rest, in a book by a non-expert for non-experts, with warm good wishes, and best of luck to the African violet. Peg Bracken. Let me do something just really quickly here, actually. And then we will get back to it. Outline. This. There we go. Okay, let me just have a quick drink of water. Remember to hydrate. I'm not going to read the contents because that will spoil the chapters of the book, but... Chapter 1. Mousing Around the House. Each chapter contains a quote from a piece of media. This quote is from Through the Looking Glass, and it says, "Oh, it's too bad," she cried. "I never saw such a house for getting in the way. Never." There are 3 kinds of housekeepers. There is the spotless housekeeper who won't stop, and there is the spot-full housekeeper who won't start. Then there is the occasional or random housekeeper, whose book this is. The random housekeeper is the girl who spoils her manicure tearing the top off a box of soap chips just before she sees the "Open Here" in large letters over the spout. She sets her automatic oven with a sure touch, the time it is to start the cooking and the time it is to stop cooking, and then forgets to put the food in. The RH factor is one which neither the random housekeeper factor is one which neither the packaging people nor the manufacturers have so far been able to lick. And she uses her dust mop periodically when the planets are in their proper configurations and when she can remember where she left it the last time. Her heart is in the right place, but she is an impulsive little thing, that's all, and when it comes to housekeeping, she'd rather be doing nearly anything else, and she generally is. Also, unlike the spotless housekeeper, she gets pretty tired of the scut work involved. To use the good old Navy term for chores that any boob can do, like cleaning up after people. The longer you stay with housekeeping, the more you begin to feel like one of those elderly gentlemen who creeps around the park picking up gum wrappers and butts with a nail on the end of a stick, except he gets much more fresh air. Consider, for a moment, your spotless housekeeper. She housekeeps most of the time, apportioning various chores to different days. Tuesday morning is ironing morning. She calls this not letting the house get away from her, making it sound a little like a nervous filly. But the occasional housekeeper doesn't know she'll be ironing that day, nor does she care to. It would depress her to know that this was the shape and color of next Tuesday morning. She would rather just let it happen should an ill-natured providence so decree. In fact, the spotless housekeeper even housekeeps while she cooks. She can put dinner for 8 on the table and you'd never know anything had been happening in the kitchen. But she loses out on a lot of good talk this way, and there's not really much point to it. After all, you expect to see a few bodies lying around a battlefield. When you cook, you cook. When you clean, you clean. Sufficient unto the time is the evil thereof. In other areas, too, the spotless housekeeper behaves oddly. I know one whose living room furniture will shortly be as many-layered as an onion. Thank you, Silver, for the follow. Welcome aboard. She slip-covered her upholstery, which she felt was too pretty to sit on. But then, so were the slip-covers, and she felt she had to protect them with taut plastic casings. Now, she has discovered a small cigarette spark makes a big hole in the plastic, and I don't know what she's going to cover the plastic with, but I'm sure she'll think of something. Right here is as good a place as any for the first of 5 important reminders. 1. Don't cover things up unless it's absolutely necessary. It just means you'll have 2 things to take care of and keep clean instead of 1. For example, don't throw a throw rug on the kitchen floor in front of the sink or the stove, or in the bathroom either. The reason you picked linoleum or vinyl instead of wall-to-wall carpeting was so you could wipe it up, remember? And it's easier to wipe up a splatter than wash a rug. If you want a small sponge rubber mat for resting your feet, that's another matter. But if you're going to spend that much time at the sink or the stove, you're probably not a random housekeeper anyway, and you'd do better to pull up a stool and sit down. Take pantry shelves. Don't put anything on them except groceries. If they're enameled or shellacked or varnished, leave them alone. If you inherit some ugly stained ones and they bother you, then cover them permanently with self-sticking paper. Never use anything loose because presently it will need dusting or wiping off, and so will the shelf you put it on. Or take so simple an object as a toaster. Leave it un-tea-cozied, and if someone gives you a cover for it, give it to someone else. A toaster cover will get dusty and sticky, and you'll have to wash it or wipe it, in addition to polishing your toaster, which you'll have to do anyway. What with crumbs and buttery fingers and one thing and another. Sorry, I can't stay longer today, but this is such a chill vibe. No worries! I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care, Silver. Hope to see you again. If not, no pressure. Nice to meet you too. People who say dust will get into your toaster are just being silly. I have never made a piece of dusty toast in my life. If you're going to start this sort of thing, you'll find yourself making wee dust covers for the glass in your bathroom toothbrush holder, one for each day of the week, and goodness only knows where it's apt to end. Really, one of the few things that's sensible to cover is chair arms and sofa arms. The usual way is with removable rectangles of the slipcover or upholstery fabric. But I know a lady who didn't have any extra material and used Irish linen placemats, and they look fine. 2. Keep the pots and pans you cook in out of sight in the cupboards or drawers. The only people who should hang up their copper cooking pots are the ones who enjoy polishing pot bottoms, for you must polish them nearly every time you use them or they'll look terrible, which makes as much sense as washing the tires every time you drive a car. There is a lot of confusion around these days about what is an object d'art and what isn't. Log cabin ladies hung their cooking equipment handy because they used it most of the time. There was no other place to put it anyway, and it made a bright spot in the dark cabin. But think of the pretties we have today. Copper pots and pans are no better looking than a lot other things that don't need polishing, and the freewheeling housewife will do well to keep this in mind. The quaint copper colander I saw in an antique shop yesterday is still just a round object full of holes, and a pan's a pan for a that. You'll do far better to hang up a picture you like, your favorite Doofy print perhaps, or White Rock's Lady of the Lake, and have them framed with non-glare glass so the kitchen light can't trip you up. For that matter, whatever makes you feel good when you look at it. In the housekeeping game, you need all the sunshine you can get, and if you feel that you must simply hang up a pot, then hang up a bright enameled iron one that you merely wipe off. 3. Every time you give the house a good going over, start with a different room. It is quite likely that you'll peter out, after a few hours slogging, and this rule ensures that you will at least peter out in a different place each time. If you stopped in the same place year after year, for instance just before you got to the back bedroom, you would eventually have to saw it off. 4. Establish a clutter depot. There are 2 kinds of clutter. There is artful clutter, as seen in full-color magazine pictures, the nice old calf-bound first folio Shakespeare face down on the nice old French fruit wood love seat with the white kid opera gloves hanging down the back. Then there is honest clutter, as exemplified by the ski sock on the mantel and the gas bill on the television set and all the other odd things which somebody should have put away and didn't. This is the latter type of clutter to which you, as a random housewife, are especially prone. If you don't remove the out-of-place object the first time you notice it, it may well hang around for months. Because your mind is so often elsewhere as you gaze about your familiar domain, the ski sock or the gas bill quickly becomes part of the accustomed scenery, and you don't see it anymore. Therefore, it is important to establish one central place, an otherwise unused closet, chest, or drawer, where all these things go. This enables you to make a clean sweep on those mornings when you feel up for it and are willing to concentrate. Then it is up to each person in the house to rescue his own belongings. If he doesn't see it around, he knows where to look. And if, in addition, everyone has one inviolate place he may keep as messy as he wants, for we all need one, just as we all need an occasional solitary moment in which to stamp and scream, he needn't feel too put upon. 5. Act immediately on whatever housewifely impulses come your way. Being but Destiny's plaything, you must seize upon the moment when you notice that something needs doing and do it with whatever you have at hand to do it with. Say, for instance, you notice a little jam on the woodwork. Now, this curiously specialized age of ours has produced a specific cleaner or polisher for anything you care to name. With this in the back of her mind, the random housewife tends to rationalize herself out of wiping the jam off the woodwork until she gets a box of that new woodwork stuff she was hearing about, at which improbable time, she thinks grandly, she'll do all the woodwork in the whole house. However, a damp dish rag or a sponge rubbed on a simple cake of wet soap will help a great deal in this situation and in a lot of other situations too. To sum up, forget the old cliche to the effect that anything worth doing is worth doing well. This isn't true. When you're going at a high lope, a fast swipe at the sink is a lot better than no swipe at all. But back to the spotless housekeeper. The truth is, and you must remember this, you don't want to be one, even though you may have an occasional qualm as you watch the pile of unironed clothes rising like bread dough. The question you must ask yourself at these times is this: who or whom are you keeping house for? Certainly not for your friends and neighbors. If their windows are shinier than yours are, it will make them feel all warm inside and they'll like you for it. You've never heard a woman say, "I simply adore Marcia. She's the most meticulous housekeeper." Certainly not for your children. You don't keep house for them, but in spite of them. No, what you keep house for is for you and your husband, but mainly for you. Because if things get too cluttered, you won't be able to think straight, and you never will get past record 2 in your conversational French course. Husbands, with a few grim exceptions, don't care much. They want a modest modicum of order, that's all. They'd rather not see how it got there either, and they hate the whine of a vacuum cleaner only slightly less than the wail of a policeman's siren hard behind. This modest modicum, then, is the thing to keep in mind, and don't let it be upgraded too far by other housekeepers. Remember, women have a tendency to grow neater as they grow older anyway. In spite of yourself, you can turn into a compulsive picture straightener, shade twitcher, and ashtray emptier, which is a straight shoot to a terribly nervous old age. One more word before we press on. Never think unkindly about someone else's housekeeping, nor speak unkindly either. You don't know what she may be up against. Perhaps she gets dizzy spells whenever she thinks about woodwork. And don't be too critical if you consider her too neat. Perhaps you don't really know her husband. Perhaps she married one of those grim exceptions, and maybe little Napoleon turns purple if the window blind is 1/4 inch out of line. There are many things we can't know, that's all, and insomuch as we have our own troubles, it behooves us all to hold our tongues. As Herman Melville has put it so aptly, quote, "Everybody else is one way or the other served in much the same way, either in a physical or metaphysical point of view, that is, and so the universal thump is passed around, and all hands should rub each other's shoulder blades and be content." This specifically talks about housewifery, because this was the 60s, and she's a housewife, and she's writing about housekeeping for housewives. But a lot of this knowledge is actually useful for anyone who wants to keep their house tidy. I feel like I probably don't need to specify that, but I wanted to give that context. Sorry, I needed to drink some more water. My throat was getting dry. Chapter 2. The Bride's Own ABCs. This time the quote is from Mother Goose. "Sally go round the sun, Sally go round the moon, Sally go round the chimney pot on a Saturday afternoon." A is for alphabet. The alphabet is a handy thing to have around the house. For instance, you can organize your canned goods with it, applesauce to zucchini. Also, whatever is in the medicine cabinet, aspirin to zinc ointment. Also, your herbs and spices, all spiced to time. You may organize your books alphabetically, too, by author, if you mainly remember authors, or by title, or by subject. Or perhaps you remember books by their color, as a friend of mine does. She thinks, "Oh, yes, that pink book by what's-his-name." So she keeps all light-colored books together, which results in some improbable shelf-mates, with the Rubaiyat next to the complete dog book. It works for her, though, and the blocks of color are pretty. And you can use the alphabet as an inexpensive tranquilizer. When you can't sleep, try a minister's cat. The minister's cat is an ardent cat who adores angoras, a bellicose cat who beats up bulldogs, a charming cat who cuts capers, and so on around and around until you fall asleep or it's time to get up. B is for burn ointment. Always keep it near the stove, not in the bathroom medicine cabinet, because whoever gets burned in the bathroom. C is for code. You and your husband had better establish one quickly for getting yourselves out of miserable situations. This is easily done with names. If he usually calls you Sue, but suddenly in company calls you Sweetie, this means he can't stand any more home movies and you'd better rescue him with a resounding lie, like a resounding headache. And if you ordinarily call him Herb, but suddenly call him Darling, he can consider himself similarly alerted. A code or firm rule will minimize future marital disasters too, such as the inevitable occasions where you'll lose each other at airports or department stores. You must decide between you now who is to stay put and who is to hunt. It's usually better that he does because he isn't wearing high heels. And you must fix upon one sure, permanent place at home for leaving messages, on a bulletin board or a mantle or under one particular clock. I know a wife who decided she was tired of both housekeeping and husband and determined to leave them. She left a letter somewhere, but he didn't find it. When she came back the next day to pick up a few things, he was understandably puzzled, and so was she, because she couldn't remember for the life of her where she put it. They became so engrossed in looking for the letter that they got quite friendly again, and they're still married. So you see what can happen. D is for dripping faucets. A dripping cold water faucet merely stains the porcelain and ruins the nervous system, but a dripping hot water faucet costs you money. It can amount to as much as $8 or $10 extra a month on your gas or electric bill. Please note again, this is during the 60s. Therefore, you must take up the situation immediately with your husband or handyman because there are more interesting ways to spend $8 or $10. E is for equipment. Once you've acquired the basic biggish things for cleaning, washing, and cooking, proceed as porcupines are set to make love, quite carefully. Otherwise, you'll be up to your bride's bouquet in unused electric bottle washers and corn shuckers. I am personally acquainted with two food liquefiers, which made just 2 dozen frozen... I am personally acquainted with 2 food liquefiers, which made just 2 frozen daiquiris apiece before they were retired to the top shelf of the pantry. Borrow the gadget first if you can. Swap something for a week in return for your sister-in-law's deep-fat fryer to find out if you'd really use it if you had one, because maybe you wouldn't. And when you buy everything in sight, you feel overworked if you use it all and guilty if you don't. Think of the attachments attachable to any self-respecting modern vacuum cleaner. At least 6, not counting the paint sprayer, all of which you are privileged to use before you drag out the wax applicator and the floor polisher. But Great-Grandma just moved gently around behind her broom for a while, then laid the dust with the polish-soaked dustcloth she fished out of her mason jar, and had time to sit down and read Love or Lechery, the story of a good girl's temptation, and a rattling good story it was, too. F is for flour. Sift your flour from the flour sack right into your flour canister. If it doesn't get bounced around, and there is no reason it should, it will sit there lightly and you won't need to sift again when you bake. Just measure. G is for gliders. Chairs with little pointy legs dimple your floors just as spike heels do. Should you happen to have a chair of this type, you might suggest to your husband that he hoist his big, handsome self out of it just long enough to put on some wider gliders or rubber pads on its feet. H is for hard-boiled eggs. You are supposed to say hard-cooked, but I have never noticed much difference if they've boiled for a while. To discourage their cracking, salt the water heavily, or prick them with a needle before you put them into the water, and start them in cold water, not hot. Sometimes you'll run into an infuriating hard-boiled egg with a glued-on shell, which must be chipped away bit by bit, and the end result looks pockmarked. To prevent this, plunge your hard-boiled eggs into cold water the instant they leave the hot. I is for instant housekeeping. This is for those occasions when you're going to be out of the house all day, but you don't want the house to look like it when your husband gets home. Therefore, the minute he leaves in the morning, you steam into instant housekeeping, which is usually housekeeping backward. According to the focal point of your house, patterns vary according to the focal point of your house and the habits and peculiarities of your spouse. For instance, your own crash plan might be set the table for dinner, build a modest set of martinis and set it in the refrigerator, lay a fire, throw out the dead flowers, shut all the closet doors and cupboard drawers, do the breakfast dishes, make the bed. Then you can sweep dust and all that sort of thing if there's still time. But remember, when life is rich and full and the chips are you-know-where, do last things first. J is for silver or gold jewelry. Shine it with toothpaste, using an old soft toothbrush. In fact, you can use it on any sort of metal. It's just gentler than most copper and brass polishes and takes more rubbing. Note, this probably means before they started putting exfoliants in certain toothpastes, so be careful if you're gonna follow that advice while using one of those hard scrubbing toothpastes, which you probably shouldn't be using anyway, but I'm not a teeth doctor, so what do I know? K is for kilowatt. This is an electrical term. I visualize a kilowatt as small and round and black like a peppercorn, though I have never seen one. However, you buy electricity by the kilowatt hour just as you buy sugar by the pound. It is a good idea to call up your electric company and find out what you pay for one in your community. Then you know whether you can afford to forget to turn the oven off or leave your light bulbs burning. For instance, where I live, kilowatt hours are a real bargain. They cost only a penny apiece. That means I can burn a 100-watt light bulb for 10 hours for a penny, or around 70 cents a month. Also, and I asked the man very particularly about this, it costs me approximately 38 cents to leave the oven on at 350 all night. This is with the oven door shut. If the oven door is open and the oven is blasting away all night at 350, it would cost me twice that. So, as you can see, even in a place where electricity is cheap, you might as well burn up dollar bills as try to heat your kitchen with the oven. And in your town, things might be much worse if you don't have some nice big dams around to furnish hydroelectric power. You may even be paying as much as 7 cents for each kilowatt hour you buy. This would cost you 7 cents to burn one 100-watt light bulb for 10 hours, or about 500 blah blah blah. This would cost you 7 cents to burn one 100-watt light bulb for 10 hours, or about $5.10 if you left it on all month. So find out. It's so funny to hear, the price difference. L is for luxurious groceries. The most painless way to buy these things, artichoke hearts, French fried almonds, smoked sturgeon, and so forth, is to include one in each strictly utilitarian load of groceries, soap powder, peanut butter, and that sort of thing. Somehow, the cost tends to get lost in the cost of the practical items, and this lessens the sting. It's all a matter of self-deception, and you can do it if you try. M is for marketing in general. You will probably become confused, as most people do, about box sizes. There is a bit of this segment I'm not going to read, or I'm going to change a word. The jumbo, the king size, the mammoth, and the large family economy. Indeed, many customers would welcome a size called the little scam, for here, at least, they would know where they stood. Certain box sizes might as well be called the big scam anyway, for they contain not an ounce more than 2 ordinary ones at exactly twice the price. You're stuck, in addition, with a great clumsy box that's too tall for your shelf. Some people have been known to take slide rules to market and compute. You might do this if you have one and know how to use it. If you don't, figure it out on the back of your grocery list. If the big clumsy box still is a good bargain, you might as well buy it. You can always repackage it yourself. Funnel the soap flakes or whatever into old empty quart mason jars or square-sided gin bottles, which will use your space much more economically. Otherwise, just choose according to which product you like or which set of plastic tumblers you're completing at the time. Remember, too, some seemingly hopeless boxes will go on your shelf if you lay them on their sides. N is for nylons. You may freeze new nylon stockings in water in your ice cube trays with the dividers removed, then let them thaw naturally, then squeeze them out and let them dry. People who do this swear that the stockings will then wear about 3 times longer. However, this doesn't prevent snags. In my own case, I'd have to freeze a couple active kittens too to do any real good, and I wouldn't dream of it. O is for odds and ends. Ovens. Never leave leftover biscuits in the oven because you'll forget they're there and burn them up sure as you're born next time you turn on the oven. There is more about ovens on page 76. There's more about biscuits on page 160. For context, we are currently on page 26. Old English cough syrup. This will charm the socks off any husband coming down with a cold, and if you can get the rest of his clothes off too and get him into bed, he will have a good night's sleep with no coughing. Fill a cheese glass 1/3 full with blackcurrant jam. Add 2 ounces of bourbon or rye whiskey. Fill it up with hot water, then stir and serve with solicitude. Oatmeal. Adding chopped raw apple to hot oatmeal greatly improves the oatmeal as nearly anything does, and it doesn't hurt the apple. Old mousetraps. If you're out of mice, you can still use the mousetrap. Paint it if you like, and nail it to the wall, spring up to hold your unpaid bills and old love letters. Omelets. Your omelets will stand up long enough for you to sit down if you add a teaspoon of flour per egg. P is for plastic bags. You will thank yourself for buying only bread that comes in reusable plastic bags and keeping all the bags. You also keep them away from little children. You can use these bags in 500 different ways. For instance, put one on each foot to protect good shoes if you must cook when you're dressed up. Use them in your dresser drawers as lingerie cases, glove cases, hosiery cases, handkerchief cases. Freeze dampened cloths in them when you get tired of ironing before you're finished. Put them as shoe covers when you travel. Put wet bathing suits and caps in them, pack food in them for picnics, slip them over ice cream cartons to catch drips, put cookies or leftover muffins in them to freeze, plus 489 other purposes there isn't room to list here. Q is for questions. Ask them. You cannot rely on your mother-in-law to volunteer much information these days. Most mothers-in-law feel so beat down by the bad publicity they've got they'd be afraid to speak up if they saw you peering into a gas tank by matchlight. But they're grateful for being asked. So is nearly everyone else. People love to talk about their specialities, and people love brides anyway. So ask the butcher, and if you deal at a supermarket where the meat is apparently untouched by human hands, ring the little bell and a butcher will magically appear. Ask the dry cleaner, ask the plumber, ask the linoleum man, ask the motherly-looking lady beside you at the linen counter when you're buying sheets, ask the baker. Once, I asked the baker what was the best way to reheat rolls. He said for 20 or 30 minutes in a very lukewarm oven, like 175 or 200. If you do it this way, he continued, instead of a 400 oven for 5 minutes, you can continue to reheat them meal after meal if you have to, and they'll never become too crisp and hard. So I tried it and found it to be true. R is for reciprocal trade agreements. When you are cooking for 2, it's a relief to have a friend in a similar fix or find one. Then you can swap leftovers. You, for instance, can cook a turkey and she can You, for instance, can cook a turkey and she can cook a ham. Then, after a while, you can trade what's left in some equitable fashion, remembering that the turkey probably cost less than the ham did. You can do this handily with pies, cakes, casseroles, and molded salads, too. S is for silver. The Grange lady will tell you the best way to polish your silver is to use it all the time, but this is one of those half-truths they're so fond of. For instance, it only takes minutes to wash down your basement walls, but they don't tell you how many. The truth is that even though you use it daily, silver won't have that high company gleam. Also, this takes some doing if you possess more silver than family. Anyway, you may like your stainless steel better with your pottery. Therefore, you still must polish your sterling flatware once in a while or get someone to do it for you. The easiest way, except for ornate patterns which have darkened backgrounds for contrast, is the aluminum salt and soda way. Put a quart of water in a big aluminum saucepan or kettle and add a tablespoon each of baking soda and salt. Bring this to a boil. Drop 4 or 5 pieces in at once and let them boil about 3 minutes. Then fish them out with tongs, wash, rinse, and dry. I've heard it suggested that this method may remove some microscopically thin film of silver, but I've seen ardent silver polishers of the silver cream and elbow grease school who must have removed more than that with each polishing. Thin old spoons are more highly regarded than fat new ones anyway, and in any case I'm sure my silver will last longer than I will. Then, when you're finished, you can wrap individual place settings in pieces of aluminum foil if you want to and if you don't have a tarnish-proof chest, and put it away. Don't let any rubber touch your silver or stay in the same drawer with it. It makes ugly black marks. Don't store salt shakers with salt in them either. And save some small screw-top glass jars to store little things in, like Diamantese spoons. T is for tea towels. White ones are best. Diapers, flour sack squares, or white terry cloth, because you can treat them rougher without noticeable harm. The way to keep a tea towel looking as fresh as the little old ladies down the street is A. Use a clean one every day, and B. When you put them in the washing machine, sprinkle 2 tablespoons of sal soda on them, then add your detergent, then your water. This treatment keeps colored tea towels looking fresh too. In excesses of mad enthusiasm, women have been known to boil their tea towels with a lemon rind to whiten them, but this doesn't do much besides steam up the kitchen. Also, a tea towel that's seen long and honorable service has a right to a few scars and blotches, as don't we all. T is also for tomato. You'll probably find that a fresh tomato keeps better on the refrigerator shelf than it does in the vegetable compartment. U is for upstairs. If you have one, keep a basket at the foot of the stairway for things that go up. Keep another at the top for things that go down. This keeps you from feeling so much like a tweenie, those little tween stairs maids who inhabit English detective stories and keep pounding up and down the stairs like pistons. If your stairway is a pretty one, get a good-looking brass or toll bucket or a rattan basket, or whatever fits in. V is for vacuum. You can vacuum farther without stopping and stooping to plug it in again elsewhere if you attach a heavy extension cord to the vacuum cord. I have never noticed that this lessens the suction any, although I haven't checked it with anyone because I don't want to spoil my amateur standing. W is for waffles. A stuck waffle happens to every woman at least once, and always at the superbly wrong time, although there is never no superbly right time for the frustrating mess this results in. It happens because you let your waffle iron get too hot and/or didn't put enough oil in your waffle batter. You must get all the old charred waffle out of the grid without using water. Use a table knife and a stiff brush. If you don't feel like tackling this at the moment, add a little more egg and milk to your batter and have some rather mediocre pancakes instead. Then, oil the grid lightly next time you use it with a pastry brush and add an extra tablespoon of oil to your batter. Make sure your iron isn't too hot, and then get going. X is for extra. Extra blankets. If you're minus storage space, a good place to keep extra blankets is right in the bed under the mattress pad. Extra gravy. When you cook a turkey, you'll probably need extra gravy before you're done with it. Buy some by the can or the carton at your grocer's or at the delicatessen. This will eke out your own and make the turkey easier to face through the weeks to come. Y is for yoga. 3 years ago, a friend of mine gave a posh luncheon for the symphony committee and the conductor. Among other splendid things in the middle of the table were a beautiful fruit salad and a large silver-studded jar for the curry mayonnaise. When the guests were seated and she removed the lid from the mayonnaise pot, there, waving his whiskers with tiny little paws braced on the rim, was a little gray mouse. He pushed himself out of the mayonnaise, peered at the people, shook the mayonnaise off his paws one by one, then jumped smack into the middle of the conductor's plate. I never heard what happened to the wee, sleek mayonnaise-laden beastie, but my friend is all right. When I saw her last week, she was sitting up, and we think she'll be able to take a little nourishment any day now. Housekeeping is disaster-fraught, you see, no matter how long you've been at it. For this reason, it is important to know the following deep breathing exercise to help you calm down in a crisis. Lie on your back, if possible, with your hands down at your sides. Shut your mouth and keep it shut as you breathe deeply as you can from way down in your stomach, letting the air finally puff out your cheeks. Let it out very slowly with your cheeks still puffed until your stomach is as flat as your own personal stomach was ever meant to be. My friend would have recovered from her experience faster, I am sure, had she lain right down and done this, and I know the symphony conductor would have understood. Z is for zippers. You aren't so apt to have trouble with them if you make sure they're zipped shut when you throw the clothes into the washer. And that is the end of chapter 2. And that is going to be where we stop for today. Sorry, I'm trying to get my bookmark off the wall. I'm going to put my bookmark in. Next stream will be... Next stream, we will be starting with chapter 3. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. It's really nice to be able to share some of these old books and stuff, and honestly, this is genuinely kind of a favorite of mine. Housekeeping books are kind of like, not my guilty pleasure, but like my secret enjoyment is I really like to read old housekeep books and stuff like that. Yeah, I actually have a book that's really important to me, because, deep lore. Anyway, it's a how-to guide for most housekeeping problems in your house, and I keep it nearby my bed because it's a comfort object for me. But yeah, that's the I Hate to Housekeep book. We're on to chapter 3 next time, and then I already have one other book in the wings, which is called Electronic Life, How to Think About Computers by Michael Crichton. I think his name is pronounced Crichton. It's really good, though. I've read a little bit of it, though it's going to be a little bit difficult to break up into pieces because, according to the contents, it has 2 chapters and over 207 pages. So we'll figure out something. But that is going to be it for the I Hate to Housekeep book for today. I'm going to take a quick BRB to get swapped over to the next game. To get swapped over to the game we are going to be playing today, which is going to be Overwatch. So give me just a minute. There's my BRB screen. Give me just a moment and I will be back with you guys shortly.